Princess Rolea fell into a seated position on the floor, as her steward was positioned next to her. The other soldiers who were captured from the team she had been leading were behind. "I demand to speak to your leader," growled the Carvrifrac princess as the humans walked about, almost gloating at their catch. "You'll get your chance. I've got to make some calls first," came a voice from behind view. The older Carvrifrac next to her fake cleared his throat to get the princess's attention. "You know, princess, now that we are captured," to which Rolea interjected, "I wouldn't have been if you had done your duty," making the older Carvrifrac pause in annoyance. "There were too many between me and you for me to have carried out that duty. I have to now follow the rules for that." The princess froze for a moment. "You can't be serious, Savik." Savik nods without looking at the princess, instead looking for the man he saw fighting with her. "Our culture is built upon tradition, even ones you might not wish to be a part of. You were beaten in single combat by a male." The princess interjects. "Not true. 2 of our soldiers were fighting with me." To which Savik nods, which makes it an even more impressive feat. He gets a growl of annoyance in return. A human woman walked over, hearing them talk. "What is going on here?" Sitting down on a crate in front of the prisoners, Savik looked at the human. "Maybe you can help. Who was the one by himself during the fight?" Sitting up, the human smiled. "That would be our fearless leader. Didn't want anyone to risk their life as our formation required 4 in front of you." Rolea sneered. "You mean your trap?" The human gasped at the accusation, placing a hand on her chest in mock surprise. "Just because your senses were not keen enough to notice us, doesn't mean it was a trap. We even called out for you to surrender as you're surrounded, and you chose to fight." Getting a nod of agreement from the steward, who got an elbow for agreeing with the human, causing a grunt of pain. "That spot is a little tender from the fight," which got another one from the princess. "That is for your failure in duty." The human woman pointed a finger at the pair as if they were children. "Don't make me separate you two. So, you were speaking earlier?" And Savik nods. "Does your leader come from a noble bloodline?" Which made the human smirk. "He would say he does." Before taking a moment to pose and take a mock tone of the ragtag group's leader, "My grandfather would tell me stories of how we were descendants of Spartan kings of over 4,000 years. Getting a laugh from the woman and a nod from Savik. "Is there any possibility that is true?" And the human shrugged. "Could be. It was a long time ago, and I remember hearing something about how everyone is related to royalty in some way or another because of mixing." Rolea smiles. "See? His bloodline is too diluted. Also, I never heard of the Spartans, so how much of a warrior family could they be?" Getting another laugh from the woman. "They weren't a family. They were an entire culture who just became part of a country known as Greece. They never died out or went extinct. They just started calling themselves Greeks instead of Spartans." Looking back and forth between the two, Sarah started to smile more as she realized what the conversation had been about. Savik nodded in understanding. "I see. What were the beliefs of these Spartans?" Causing the human to think for a while. "Well, I remember hearing the only way to get your name on a grave is for men to have died in combat, or women to have died during childbirth. Both were seen as a way of supporting Sparta. They were fierce warriors. Often, just a single word could keep an army out of the country. Oh, and marriage was some kind of ritualistic combat, I think." By this time, Nick walked over. "What is all this commotion?" He looked around at a giggling Sarah, a stoic-looking male Carvrifrac, and what he could only assume to be a blushing female Carvrifrac. Sarah looked up. "Oh, just talking about Spartan marriage fighting." To which Nick sighed. It wasn't combat. Spartan men would meet up with the women they found attractive during the night, and take them back to their barracks or someplace else. Sarvik tilted his head some. Do you believe R'lyeh to be attractive? Getting a wide-eyed look from the princess, Sarvik, you stop this right now! The human male looked confused and looked over. To be honest, I never really thought of a Carvivrak as beautiful or not, but, I mean, if we weren't at war, maybe, kinda. Sarvik nodded once more. Then it is settled. The combat took place at night, and it seems all the conditions for both cultures are met, or at least enough to be considered valid under the mixed cultures doctrine. Nick looked even more confused as he looked at the male Carvivrak, then the female who looked ready to die from embarrassment, and his second-in-command, Sarah, who looked ready to burst from laughter, and when he remembered what they were talking about, marriage, got his own look of shock and horror. No, 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 no! Sarvik nods. You are to be paired with Princess R'lyeh. Which was what Sarah needed to hear to burst out laughing, finally, and almost fell off the crate. The whole thing caused everyone to look over, prisoner and non alike. We are in agreement there, human. There is no way this is going to happen. Sarvik took a deep breath. I'm afraid, as steward of the royal family, it is my duty to inform your father. Nick shook his head. No, there is no way I can marry a furball. Sarah, for her part, finally fell to the floor before managing to get something out that wasn't laughter. Bum, 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 bum. To the tune of Here Comes the Bride, getting a kick from Nick, which only returned her to her crazed laughing state, which, by now, more people started figuring out what was going on, and some more laughter started. Only one from the Carvivrak. R'lyeh turned to look at which one of her soldiers was laughing. Whoever is laughing is going to have their tongue cut out. Before turning to Nick. If we kill Sarvik, no one will tell. To which Sarah's hand shot up. I will. And Sarvik nods. We have a second in agreement from the groom's side. We just have to contact your father. He will agree to the ceasefire the humans have been asking for. Nick looks down. We would have to kill more than Sarvik. When a cough from behind caught his attention, causing Nick to look back. Command finally answered. Nick took a deep breath and pointed a finger at the Carvivraks. No speaking. And then pointed at Sarah. Pull it together. As the now out-of-breath woman took deep breaths to get it back. Okay, I'm done now. Nick walked over and answered the line, talking about the success at capturing the high-value target in their area, and how it was the princess. After a few minutes of talking, Nick returned with a different look on his face, and Sarah wiped her eyes, having cried from laughing so hard. Oh, I don't think I can survive another laughing fit like that. It was too funny. Nick took a deep breath, causing Sarah to look up in amused horror as Nick spoke. Command told me to contact the Carvivraks and use any means necessary to get them to agree to the ceasefire. And Sarah smirked while holding in her laughter, and got slapped upside the head for it. She screamed in pain. What was that for? And Nick smiled. You said if you started laughing you were going to die. I just saved your life. Taking a deep breath, Sarah nods. I guess, but you could have held back. R'lyeh's embarrassment died down enough that she started to glare at Nick. If you think for a second I will marry you, I would rather die. Nick held a finger up and bopped R'lyeh on the nose to silence her. Not getting married. Turned to Sarvik. Going to get Tony to agree to a ceasefire anyway. And then turned to Sarah. Someone is getting a demotion. To which she replied, worth it. Nick sighed and walked away to a secluded area he and Sarah would talk, and Sarah started to follow. Though I am in agreement with killing the princess, it will be a nice revenge for everything the Furballs have done to us since the war started. A hand going to her sidearm. Nick turned to her. Put it away. I don't like the idea either. It could at least be enough of a distraction to get the upper hand or get some end to this war. Sarah looked at him seriously, for the first time since starting the conversation with the aliens. Nick nods. You have a weird way of grieving, you know that? Your humor was bad before, but this is twisted. No, we are not going to plan a red wedding. We'll use it as a cover to regroup and... Sarah groaned out of frustration. Why are we even listening to the human collation? They abandoned us, and then when our resistance group got good enough, they contacted us and started demanding we follow their orders. Nick nods. Yeah. Not like they started giving us intel, equipment, trained soldiers. Causing Sarah to stop him. Okay, you made your point. Still, marriage? Nick shrugs at that. When we started fighting, I thought about how men used to throw themselves on grenades to save others. I've always been ready to do that. I guess to save lives, I'll have to take an arrow to the knee. Before starting to walk back in, a smile returned to Sarah's face. Without turning, Nick simply said, Knew they would get that cursed smile back. The two Carvivraks had been arguing again, with the princess drowning out the steward whenever he tried to get the transmission frequency to contact the king. Nick picked up a clean-ish rag and shoved it into the princess's mouth. Alright, fine, I accept. Getting a muffled scream of anger from the princess, followed by what was surely an obscenity-filled tongue-lashing, defeated by a rag. Sarvik looked at Nick, angry for the first time. We might be your prisoners, but that is no way to treat the princess or your future wife. Nick nods some. Would you like me to remove it and risk going deaf in that ear? Pointing to the one that was on the side of the princess. A momentary glance from Sarvik at the princess, who was still trying to yell between attempts to remove the rag stuck on her sharp teeth, got a... For now. The signal frequency is 195.2515.234.202. Also, I would refrain from using your human slur for our leader. He doesn't much like being compared to a human breakfast cereal mascot. Nick nods, then helps Sarvik to his feet and turns to Sarah. I could use my second in command. Gets a sigh of annoyance as she rebuttons the strap holding her sidearm while standing. Okay. After approaching the comms, the operator puts in the frequency, and releasing Sarvik's hands, he types in the code as the image of the king of the Carvivraks comes on with a roarous statement. How dare you lay a hand on my daughter? If she is not returned to me within 1 Earth hour, I will glass the planet, as I would rather see her dead than at the mercy of you lowly. As Nick decided to throw him off his game. Calm down, Dad. Causing the king to stop. What did you call me? And why is Sarvik standing next to you? Sarvik coughed to grab the attention of the group, and to make this more noble than commoner. It is with much honor and regret that I have to inform you that this human has successfully completed the rite of binding. This information caused the king's lower jaw to drop, and Sarah chimed in. Funny you mentioned hand earlier because he's taken your daughter's hand in marriage. The king looked outraged. You're going to cut her hand off for marriage? And Sarvik raised a hand. It is a figure of speech, your majesty. Humans call grabbing another's hand with your own taking, often done before the rings are placed on the hand of the one being wed. Nick and Sarah both turned to look at Sarvik, who doesn't turn his head. A steward must be informed on all relevant information. Nick turns back to the king. As your future son-in-law, I ask that you have your forces stand down. Don't want to accidentally kill a relative of mine, do you? The king let out a low growl of annoyance as a spitting sound was heard behind the group. The princess finally worked the rag out of her mouth. I object to this wedding! Only getting a yell in response. I can't stop it! If Sarvik has said the terms have been met, I would have to break years of tradition and condemn our bloodline to death to break it. The two humans went wide-eyed, as they didn't realize how seriously the Carvifrax took their tradition. Turning his head, the king spoke solemnly. Tell our generals to stand down, and to return fire if fired upon. The comms operator relayed the message to the human command, which quickly ordered a similar command. Turning back, the king looked like he was about ready to reach through the screen and strangle him. Know this, human. If you have lied about your intent, I was originally planning on subjugating the humans, but I will exterminate your species if you are lying. And Nick swallowed hard, at the sudden realization that his plan of using this as a cover for the human forces to regroup was a bigger gamble than he first thought. Sarah smirked and turned to look up at Nick. No pressure.